Hi, my name is James Lewis. I'm the head coach of the University School Speech and Debate team, and I'm here to introduce Lincoln Douglas Debate to you. I want to share my screen with you. So in Lincoln Douglas Debate, the students are given a resolution to debate. The affirmative's job is to persuade the judge that the resolution is generally true. The negative job is to persuade the judge that the resolution is generally false. Keep in mind that students do not choose which side of the resolution that they are arguing. In fact, they will, throughout the course of a day, have to argue both sides of the resolution. So they are making the case that is the best case that they could conceive of as students researching the topic for either side of the resolution, not expressing their own ideas necessarily. So I really like to think of a round breaking down into three different parts. Debaters come into a round with prepared cases. So they'll read their affirmative and their negative cases. They also have the burden of responding to their opponent's case because generally, if they don't respond to arguments or the entirety of a case, their opponent will assume that those arguments are conceded. And then they also have to defend their own case. You, as a judge, your job will be to choose a winner and then assign points. And we'll talk a little bit about the ballot in a moment. How's the round set up? Well, the affirmative has the privilege or has the advantage of speaking first and last. So the affirmative will read their case, and that will take 6 minutes. And then the negative will cross examine the affirmative for 3 minutes. The negative will then read their case, but in addition to reading their case, they will also respond to the affirmative case. And then we'll have a cross examination, this time with the affirmative cross examining the negative. Then we move into the rebuttal phase of the debate. In the rebuttal phase of the debate, debaters are not supposed to bring up new arguments for their position. They're supposed to engage with their opponent during this phase of the debate. So in the affirmative speech, which is 4 minutes, their job is to respond to the negative case and defend their only case against the attacks that have already been made. The negative has one last speech, which lasts 6 minutes. And in that speech, their job is to defend their own case, reassert their attacks on their opponent's case. And what some debaters will try to do at the end of their rebuttal speeches is they will give key voting issues, or they'll say to the judge, Judge, here are a few main reasons why you should uphold my position and why I am the better debater in today's round. Now, that second affirmative rebuttal is only 3 minutes. And so what some affirmatives might try to do, rather than going down both sides of the debate or going over both cases and rehashing them, they might just choose that choose to use that 3 minutes to give a holistic view of the round and say, Judge, here are the main reasons to uphold my position. Here are the main issues in today's debate. Here's why you should vote for my side. So, how does a debate case look? Well, I don't want to get too caught up in the minutia, but what I do want to do is give you an idea of how Lincoln Douglas debate cases typically look. There are really usually two parts to a Lincoln Douglas debate case. The first part is framework. And the purpose of framework is to help you as a judge to decide what arguments in a round really matter. And so often they'll try and define some key terms, maybe throw out a few observations to establish boundaries for the debate. And so here you see a resolution that I like to give my summer campers: chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream. So in debating that topic at the very beginning of the debate, debaters might have to do a couple of things. First of all, define what we mean by chocolate. What do we mean by vanilla? But there's also something else. How do we determine whether a flavor of ice cream is better? How do we determine which arguments are more valuable in ascertaining the truth of that they're trying to arrive at in the round? And that's what debaters will do with a value. They will, at the beginning of their case, independent of the arguments they make around the resolution, try to persuade the judge that we should be looking to accomplish one ultimate goal or ultimate good overall in the context of the resolution. And these are often really big ideas like justice, morality, happiness, things like that. Now that they've posed these big ideas, the question is, well, how do I know whether justice has been accomplished? How do I know what morality looks like? And that's where the criterion comes in. So The criterion is designed to help you as a judge determine whether we have reached the goal of the value and help you to decide which side better achieves that goal. So think about those values that we just talked about, justice, right? How do we know whether a government has acted justly? Well, we might pose a criterion of protection of rights. How do we know whether individuals are acting morally? We might look to philosophers like Immanuel Kant and look to his categorical imperative. How do we know whether a society is protecting liberty? Well, we might look to things like bodily autonomy and guaranteeing rights of bodily autonomy as being core to liberty. So you have the value, which is this overarching goal or this overarching goal, and then you have the criterion, which is a kind of measuring stick for that overarching goal. After you have the framework part of the case, you're going to have the main argument. And debaters break those main arguments up into contentions. And sometimes they'll even break the contentions down into subpoints. And contentions will usually have a claim or a tagline, which is a kind of 1 or 2 sentence summary of the contentions. They'll have warrants or arguments supporting the contention. And debaters do a lot of research. They'll offer a lot of evidence, often from scholarly sources, sometimes from news sources. And then they'll explain why the argument matters. So if I have established that chocolate has more protein than vanilla, I don't know if that's true. I'm just giving it as an example. Why does that matter? What is the impact of that? And that's what debaters are often trying to do. They're trying to establish as many different impacts on their side of the argument so as to convince you to vote for their side of the argument. Well, let's talk a little bit more specifically about what it means for you as a judge. So I'm going to share my screen again. And this time, you're looking at a copy of the ballot that we often use in Ohio. So you'll notice that on the ballot, there are very defined times for each speech. So one of the things you will want to be familiar with as a judge are those timings that I just shared with you. And you will want to keep track of the time so as to make sure that a debater does not excessively go over. Sometimes a debater might finish their sentence. That's up to your discretion as to whether you will allow that. It's usual practice to allow them to finish their thought before they sit down. But of course, debaters should not abuse that. When you are given a ballot by whoever is running the tournament, you'll see the names of the debaters and the positions that they have been assigned. Remember, they do not choose those positions. So what's your job as a judge? Well, I think it's really important that judges do a few things. The first thing that's important is that independent of this ballot, on a separate piece of paper, you should keep track of the arguments debaters are making. And keeping track of these arguments on a separate piece of paper will help you to see the progression of the debate. It will help you to ascertain which debater is doing a better job in the round of supporting their position and responding to their opponent's positions. A second important thing is giving feedback. Debaters really rely on you as judges to know what they need to do in order to improve at their craft. And as a coach, one of the most valuable tools I have is looking at the ballot after a tournament to know what my debater has to improve on. And so you'll notice that a typical ballot we use in Ohio will have different segments of the speech. And you'll notice that the timings are there for the speech as well to help you keep time. And it is very useful if for each speech, you can give some kind of feedback. The feedback does not always have to be positive. It should always be constructive. And it should never be tied to a debater's identity. It should be tied to their performance and where they are in mastering the craft. And please remember, these students are volunteering on a Saturday to do this activity. So while you may need to give tips for improvement, they should always be worded in such a way so it's constructive rather than destructive of a student's self-esteem. Finally, at the end of the debate, you'll choose which side did the better debating. You'll list their code number. Ignore this. We do not give low point wins in Ohio. You'll sign the ballot. You'll say what school you're affiliated with, and then you'll give points. Generally, it is good to give points between 21 and 30. 30 is very rare. I have seen national final rounds where neither debater should have earned a 30. 29 or 28 might be our best debaters in the state, debaters who you expect to see competing at the state tournament. 26 or 27, those are very good experienced debaters. Then 25 through 21, I would say most debaters fall in, especially early in the season, in the 25 range. And then below, you really want to think carefully about giving points below that just because of the message you might be sending a debater, even a young debater who's inexperienced. What is ultimately very important is the reason for decision. Um, every debater looks at that right after they look at whether they won or lost the round, because they want to know what argument convinced you. And I'll give you an example of an argument or of a reason for decision that's helpful and a reason for decision that's not helpful. Not helpful. Negative did a better job of debating. We would hope that the winner did a better job of debating. Helpful comments say how negative did a better job of debating. I was convinced by negative's use of empirical evidence. Negative did an excellent job of responding to his opponent's arguments and showing how his side better met the winning framework in the debate. Substantive arguments that engage with the argumentation, and once again, I caution you to avoid, not only caution, I strongly urge you to avoid any kind of arguments tied to a debater's identity. But arguments that really interact with the argumentation are going to be the most educational kind of reasons for decisions that help debaters to improve. So those are some of the basics of Lincoln Douglas debate. We are so grateful to you for helping to sustain our activity by judging. So thank you very much for judging, and I look forward to seeing you at our next tournament.